Welcome to Code Creative. I'm Travis Tolson, and with me is Sarah Tolson.
Yes. It feels
Um,
so good to sit down and do this again.
Shenanigans.
Yay. So
Yeah.
what are we going to do this time?
Well,
You actually have a plan for this one.
yeah, I guess so. So basically, at Knowledge 24, I did a lab where
Epic lab. Sorry.
where I basically walked people through building the game of Battleship in UI Builder. Now, building this actual lab took me like most of the first part of the year to do.
There was lots of cussing. It was
There,
magnificent.
there was. So obviously, this lab did not cover everything that was built into the game. I mean, honestly, I feel like to some extent it barely covered the actual UI builder part. Like when I actually finished writing the entire lab, I had something like 4+ hours of content
Yeah, you
written
had to
out
cut it
in
down.
the lab, and I had to cut it down to about 40 minutes. So in this live series, the goal is to kind of revisit all the topics that were missed, and to do that, we're going to rebuild the entire thing from scratch. And right now, I've got showing up on screen kind of a screenshot of what the other app looked like. Now, I nuked my PDI that had it. I still have a copy in Git, but we're starting completely from scratch. And so some of the problems we may encounter again. Although there's a kind of template in my mind for how this works.
They're not
And
problems, they're opportunities to explore as a developer what the heck's going on with UI Builder.
Yeah. And so like I've got the original game design kind of, this is kind of the presentation that I put together. This was not included in the lab. This was just my thoughts put on paper as I was building out the lab. So we're going to be kind of following to some degree the same pattern here. I'm going to apply some of the lessons I learned to improve the app this time around. But that's kind of the goal, is to rebuild this application from scratch. I've installed some basic plugins to get my instance off the ground. But aside from that, I haven't even created the scoped app yet. So we're
really starting from the beginning.
Yeah, completely from scratch.
Well, that's good, because that'll give me time for you to build up my courage to actually do something with UI Builder, because I'm terrified of it.
So fortunately for you, the first part is going to be the back end stuff, the data model, flow designer, some of those things to get the game engine working so that we can move to UI Builder second. And then the third part is, assuming we get this far, because we know how these projects can go sometimes.
We get distracted.
Yeah, but the goal is to eventually build the front end in both UI Builder and in Service Portal. Throughout the entire process of building this lab, I think I said a couple 100,000 times, I could build this so much faster in Service Portal. But
you know what's really funny about that is when I was before I joined ServiceNow, the ecosystem or whatever, and I was doing web development design on like Squarespace and WordPress and stuff like that. That you looked at me and you were like, "This is easier in Service Portal." So I should have turned that around on you.
Yeah, well, and you know, it's one thing for me in the fit of trying to learn something new, because UI Builder, despite my expectation, is something new. There are aspects that are like React, but it's not React. There's aspects that are like Redux, but it's not Redux. There are elements of modern UI development, but not really.
Not fully
Um,
any of those
it's
things. It's its own thing, and you have to learn it like a new thing, like you
You
said.
really do. Like I felt like I was learning UI development all over again. Like there was a point at which I could bring in my pre-existing skill, but like I really had to set aside my expectations about what I thought I knew about UI development, because UI builder is just a completely different beast. Um,
Even as a seasoned service portal developer, right? It's just
yeah,
not the same,
it's just not the same.
which is why
But
I'm curious.
that said, I feel like when I was, it's one thing for me to say I could build this so much faster in Service Portal, but like I'm hoping to actually put that to the test and see if Service Portal is actually as easy as I think, especially now that I have more experience with UI Builder. And I've done this once in UI Builder already,
Mhm.
so I know some of the gotchas to look out for this time around. Um, Whereas with Service Portal, I've not built this before. I don't think I've actually built anything. I mean, I know the gist of it because I have a lot of experience with ServiceNow. I mean, I've got like 12, 10 years of experience with Angular JS.
So what release did you start on the platform, Travis? I love asking you this question.
Uh, October 2010, 2011.
Dang,
There are certainly people who go back farther. Page.
Paige. I was like, we need to stick a little jab at Paige in there.
um, but yeah, it goes back before the alphabet days, so it's a little harder for me to remember what the names were back then.
Yeah, this platform has been a part of our lives just as a household since I feel like the dawn of time. Like,
Back in my day, we didn't have no fandangled syntax highlighting.
yeah, like no, I don't go back that far. I think
But
King.
yeah, so
Yeah, but
so that's kind of the objective here, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to a potential comparison between UI Builder and
me
Service
too.
Portal, not necessarily from a which is better standpoint, but just to try and understand some of the advantages and disadvantages of each and get a more accurate comparison of the two.
Completely custom
Um,
app's a good way to do that.
yeah, and this app is fairly interactive, so it really puts to test some of the more advanced stuff.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so with that, let's get started on building the back end of this application.
Okay, so we're starting with. Did you put up a picture of kind of the data model earlier, or was
Um, Somewhere.
that was game events?
Let's see. That one's game events. What's the data model on? Server data model
And
is
even
on
as a UI
agent.
developer, I have to say this is really the best place to start. If you don't have good data that is put together well on the back end, whether you're using UI Builder or Service Portal, you're going to have a bad time.
So this is roughly the data model. So you've got some aspects that give you like the game state. So that's going to be your game record, your players, your ship sets, your ship location. I am going to change that up a little bit in this build. I'll go over those details as we're building it. But really, the core of the application is that game command and game event table. Basically, players issue commands into the game command. So, like join game, place ship, take turn. All of those are game commands that the player can say, "Hey, I'm going to do this thing." Then the game engine, which I built in Flow Designer, um, takes those commands, determines whether or not it's a valid command. Can the player actually do this in the current game state? And if so, then it updates the game record and the other associated records on the back end. And then it generates a game event, which is what the UI is looking for to know that a game command has completed. So that's kind of the gist of how this particular backend works. Um, So with that, let's dive into the instance and start actually building some things.
We can build a scoped application, right?
Yep. So I'm going to go to my company applications, and again, we're building this almost entirely from scratch. Like I've done a couple steps to install the UI Builder plugin. We'll go over that when we actually get to UI Builder. Create new. Let's get started.
Let's get it started.
And
why did you name it Mothership? Inquiring minds want to know.
well, I mean, ServiceNow is known as the mothership, and it being the Battleship game, it made sense. And
I
even
do love
better,
that Brad Tilton allowed you to say, what is it by Tilton Bradley?
so this is yes, this is from the Knowledge 24 Lab, Mothership by Tilton Bradley, because without him, this lab didn't exist. Of course,
Sorry.
there's a bunch of people that bear some credits on this one. I had a credits down at the end to cover everybody that helped make the lab actually work.
If I suddenly run away, it's because there's a 90-pound dog behind me doing 90-pound dog things. So, yeah.
All right, so I'm going to create a new role, and this will be the mothership admin. And we'll continue. And then I'm going to go back and continue in Studio. And I can't remember if that actually creates the role or not, but we'll find out in a second. Yep. Okay. So that gives me my admin role. So we're done there. Now I'm operating in Studio. Now I want to set up a couple things with my scoped application just to make things easier. And I usually do this at the start of every scoped application. First is I create that admin role. Next, I add my admin role as the user role, which may seem counterintuitive, but basically, when you create tables in a scoped application, ACLs can the ACLs will automatically create for the role that you put in the user role. Like it'll automatic, and I'll show this when I'm building the table. But I like to put my admin role in here because it automatically gives create, read, update, delete to that admin and makes it really easy. So I'm going to save that.
And is that kind of a overarching role for someone that's building this and administering it or anything, or will the players have a separate role?
This admin role would not be for building it. This would be for administering the game application. So
Got it.
this would be like the equivalent of your HR admin. Not linking to source control just yet because I don't have anything for that. But then what we're going to do is I'm going to create, oops, I'm not creating a new app. I want to create a new file. And what I want is a menu.
Is this like a module menu?
This is one of the big guys down the side here. So like
Yeah.
self-service is a menu.
Okay.
So that's one of the top levels.
And a menu contains modules.
And I'm going to add the admin role to that. And I'll save that. And then I'm going to add it to the menu in our application record. And basically what this is going to do is it'll automatically, anytime I create a table, if I check the add to menu, it'll default to the applications menu. So those first two steps make creating the tables and data model a lot easier in the next steps. But before I get to building those, I need to go to GitHub, because we need to go go back. We need to create a new repo. And I'm going to create this on the code creative one. We'll call this one Mothership Do. I'm going to make this one public so everybody can play with it. And we'll create that repository.
Now, why are you doing this instead of just like update sets into things?
Because if my PDI dies, I lose everything. And over the years, I've lost enough projects to my own stupidity. And I don't feel like losing this one. In fact, some of the previous Code Creative Lives stalled out in part because, as part of regular processes, sometimes your PDI gets reclaimed, and when it gets reclaimed, all your stuff goes away. Now, at this point, I think they're like you can get backups and stuff sometimes.
And that's a beautiful thing, but it's
But
iffy, and I don't like to bother the nice people at ServiceNow.
exactly. I don't like just losing the PDI with everything in it really kind of takes the wind out of my sails enough a lot of times. And I
Yeah.
don't like bothering people and being like, hey, I was stupid. Please fix this for me. Because I don't like to bother people. Okay. So next up, I need to where is it? I'm trying to remember. All right. So next I need to go to my settings. And then I need to go to my developer settings, my personal access tokens. So I've already created one here, but usually when you want to connect to Git repo, you're going to want to generate a personal access token. And that access token is the password for the credential, and I'll kind of show that in a moment.
I know how this works, but you say token, and I think a little about little arcade tokens that you get to play the arcade games.
Okay, I'm going to switch to us for a second while I get my authenticator out. I think it's this one. Too many authenticators.
You don't want to see your password?
Nope. No, it just changed on me.
Paige doesn't like that you're hiding your screen so we can steal your password.
Okay. All right. So now, and you can see that my old ones, Mothership and Mothership UI, have already been given access, but I am going to add, and I have to select my repository, Mothership Do, and update. So this is going to allow the personal access token that I've already created to access that Git repo. So now I'm going to flip back to that repo because I'm going to need it. I'm going to need some info off of it. And where are you? There you are. Okay. So I need this URL. And now we can link to source control in Studio. So I'm going to paste that URL that I just copied. And then I'm going to select, oh, shoot, no, bugger. Okay.
What happened?
Okay, so I scrapped my old PDI, so my credential isn't in here anymore. So I have to create a new credential, which, I mean, that's not actually that bad. So let's go back to the developer settings.
Wait, you can't use the same kind of credential in multiple PDIs?
Well, I can, but my credential is gone.
Oh.
My like when I regenerate this token here, I'm going to click regenerate token, and it's going to give me a big fancy string. And then I'm going to use that token to create a credential in the ServiceNow instance. But as you can see here, that big fancy string isn't here anymore. So the old token is a one-time generate. You generate it once, and then you have to keep it or lose it or change it.
And did you not keep your token?
So I am getting ready to click the regenerate, but I don't want everybody to have it. So, okay, I've now clicked the regenerate, and it's doing it's allowing me to set an expiration. And then I click regenerate, and then I get this little token, and I can copy it
And not lose it this time?
and not, well, no, because because I can, regenerating it is a good idea. So you don't want to paste and leave that token in plain text somewhere, because if I did, then somebody without username, password access, they could just use the token to just delete my Git repos. So, you
It's
know,
kind of like it's kind of like having your password on a post-it note on the
yeah.
monitor of your.
And ServiceNow likes to have a lot of access for linking to source control. So that token is a pretty powerful one over those repos. So now what I have to do is I have to take that token that I just copied, and I have to go to credentials. I think it's this one. And then click new. And we're going to create a basic auth. Yeah, basic auth credential. I'll give it a name, Travis GitHub, my username in GitHub, and then I'm going to paste the token. I'm pretty sure it's a password field, but just in case. Yeah, okay. So I paste the token into the password field, and you can see it's stupid long. And then I'm going to click submit. No. All right, so now I have my credential created, and there it is right there. So now I select the credential that I just created. That's going to give the ServiceNow instance access to source control now. I'm going to use my Code Creative email address for this one. And we'll do initial commit because it's boring and you're supposed to. I mean, you're not supposed to, but it's just, it's a thing. Doesn't actually matter what you type into that box. You can type anything you want. All right, so now we're successfully connected to source control. And now when I go back to well,
What happened this time?
well, I used the browser back and it showed my token.
Don't you know the first rule about tokens is you don't let anybody else see your token?
Well, I didn't expect the browser back key to show it. I figured they would help me out with that, but I guess not. All right, so now you can see that I have a new branch on this Git repo for dev 264025. And so that's the branch for my PDI instance. And if I select it, you'll see the initial commit, which is the text that I entered, and the basic data. So there we go. All right, so we've got the app set up and linked to Studio. Now we're going to start creating some tables. And like if I were a good person, I'd probably use App Engine Studio or some of the new fandangled stuff. But
Yeah, I was going to ask why you're not using the new hotness, or actually almost not the new hotness with the new developer studio situation. They announced it.
yeah, so I haven't really used AES much. My understanding is that it's supposed to be more of a low code thing, but I don't know. I haven't explored it a lot because Studio has everything I need. Now when the new Studio comes out, I'll switch to that in a heartbeat. Like,
That looks pretty sick.
yeah. I'm really hyped about that. But AES just didn't offer quite enough for me to there wasn't anything that was like I have to switch from Studio. And I'm super comfy with Studio. Ooh, Paige says the cool pieces in AES are going to be in the new studio too.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So then
I'm
you can
really
play with
I was
all of
really
the
excited when
things.
I saw that. That was so cool. That
Mhm.
the new studio is super exciting. All right, so now let's begin creating some tables.
Yes, tables.
Which one do I want to create first? Let's see.
The game command
I
table.
think it's no, I think I actually need to start at the leaf tables. So
The what table?
uh, I don't actually want to create a player table because I'm just going to use sysuser for it.
Now this is like a demonstration sort of app thing, but like if you were building something in production, would you want to use the sys user table or maybe extend off it? What do you think would be the best practice there?
Honestly, I would probably stick to sysuser. Um, but I might add like a player profile record to add additional information to it. And I mean, there are advantages and disadvantages to each. Um, and I've seen different applications do this differently, like ServiceNow's own applications. CSM, of course, inherits sysuser, like extends sysuser and implements, their contacts and consumers through extension.
Yeah,
But
PSVS
I
does the same thing with Citizen, I believe.
Yeah, but there are other applications that I want to say use like a profile, like they add additional metadata via a separate profile record. And it just depends on what your use case is. I don't think there's any one right or wrong answer. There's valid reasons for preferring each of them. Um,
Talk to your ServiceNow representative for more information.
All right, so I don't need player, but I will need. Let's start with the ship table because we need boats.
We
Boats,
didn't put,
boats, boats.
but you didn't put boats in there. You put spaceships,
Well, yes, but they're
space
boats,
boats.
boats, space boats, space boats. Um, so, so this is where you can see that the add module to menu picked up the mothership menu that I added to our application record.
Hmm.
I didn't have to select anything. And that's what I love about setting up your application record first is you get a lot of the benefits. You get a lot of benefits in terms of access controls because you can see the user role has already selected to admin, and the menu that I'm adding the module to goes straight to mothership. Now, uh, in this case, I actually don't want a module, so I'm going to tick that off. All right, so actual, let's flip this around. I actually need a different one first. I need ship set. This is my set of ships that can be used in the game. And I created this table specifically so that I could add different sets, like one for the rebels, one for the empire, that sort of thing.
We
One
need a
for Star
Star
Trek
Trek.
fans.
We gotta put a Star Trek set in there.
So name is going to be a string. Womp womp.
And this is just
Actually, we'll make
ServiceNow
this
App Dev
template.
101 putting your tables together, right?
Yeah.
According to the data architecture that you've already like mapped out.
Pretty much. So I'm going to give it a name field. I'm going to do translated text so that we can use translations, internationalize the game. Max length 255 because that's the largest number that still gives you the single line text field.
I did not know that.
Then I'm going to need, oh wait, no, this is the ship set. So I need true false field. And I'm going to rename that one to is default to make it a little more clear. And controls, we're going to create access controls for admin. I don't need it extensible. Don't need auto number because we're going to use the name field. And then create, update, delete, allow config. Basically, this is your application access. This dictates how other application scopes can interact with your table. And I'm just going to say that other application scopes have the freedom to do whatever they want, but I'm going to track you.
So if later we want to build chess in ServiceNow, we can use the same ship sets, right?
Potentially, I guess, if you wanted to. Yeah, reasonably. Okay, so now we've got our ship set table, and you can see that access controls were created for create, delete, read, and write, all for the, and if I opened it up, it would show that it created it for admin. Okay. Then we need a new table, and that's going to be our ships. And I
And
don't
why aren't
want
you making
that.
it plural since it's ships?
Because the naming standard in ServiceNow is that the table name is singular, representing a singular record.
Unless you're ServiceNow and making the sys properties table, right?
Yes. Yes, there are a couple exceptions, most notably from the very early days. All right, so the ship will have a name, and that's going to be translated text 255, and that'll be a display field. We need a reference to our ship set. So it's going to be a reference field to ship set. And then I need an image, which is just the representation of the ship on the game board. And some people might want me to use an image field, but I'm not going to do that.
Why not?
Because when I tried, oh, bugger, I messed up already anyway. All right, hold on a second. So I already messed up the ship set table.
That's
So,
okay. We'll edit this in post.
so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to apply remote changes, and I'm going to discard those changes, and that puts me back to the initial.
Wait, you started all over again?
I started over at the initial commit. So I'm going to recreate that table.
It's a good way to undo stuff.
Yeah, and this is where if you commit periodically, you have like save points that you can go back to. So the reason that I obliterated everything is because I actually want ship sets and ships to be tracked in update sets. I want these to be part of the application. And you'll notice that it set the extends table to application file. So now when I create ships and ship sets, they'll travel with the application. And this is why the image field is problematic, because the image field does not like scoped applications for whatever reason. Like I had a ton of issues trying to get the attachments for image fields to travel with the scoped application. Like it wouldn't work. And I don't know if it was my instance or if I was doing something wrong, but I don't feel like running into that issue again at all
That's
or
really
trying to
weird.
figure it out because it brought me so much pain last time. So I'm just not going to do it. Okay. Controls, user admin, bip, and tracking. Submit. Create application file table. And we're going to do ship. And we're going to track this one in update sets too. It's getting kind of toasty in here with the lights.
What? Yeah, you. I need to get good lights. I don't have good lights like you. Wait. So when you do the track and update sets, you know how data files like you do them, and they don't track and update sets unless you click the little link to manually put it in your update sets. This means that it will automatically go to an update set when you create
Yes.
it, right?
Yes. This means when you
That's
create
handy.
records on this table, it's tracked in update sets. Caller access, caller tracking, create it for admin. And we need name, or translated text, display true. And then I need ship set, which is going to be a reference field to ship set. And then I need the image, which is going to be a reference to db underscore image. Because this, for whatever reason, when you add an image on the db image table, the attachments for it do get captured in update sets. Those images travel with the application. So I'm going to create the images on that table and I'm going to reference them and it'll be happy.
Whatever makes the application happy.
Yes. All right. So ship set image. Okay. And I think that's all I need for this, at least for now. All right. So next up, I'm going to come back here. Well, I don't know. Let me try something. That's tables. No.
What are you
Okay.
doing?
Reload. Well, we're going to update the forms.
Oh. See, they don't let me do this part of the implementation much. They're like, no, go do portal. We'll take care of the tables. And I'm like, okay.
Figure. But I want to do it from here. I don't want to. Oh, well. New.
You gotta go into the form designer thing.
Form builder.
Is that the new one?
I think so.
Yes.
Ooh, it's so pretty. Now, this is one of the new things that I do use extensively.
I think
I
I
like
had
this
to
one.
show it to you, though.
No, that was the old version. And I did not like the old version as much. It grew on me as its quirks got worked out. But I like this one. This one's nice.
This is nice. This is easy to use.
Yeah, this one makes me happy. And then configure related lists. And we're going to add that one. I wonder, can I change related lists from in here?
The text is hard to
Embedded
read
list.
on your screen, so I can't look for you.
Huh?
The text is hard to read on your screen, so I can't help you.
Oh, well, let's zoom in to make it a little easier.
All
Page
right.
says I cannot, though. That's okay. Is it easier to read now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Improvements. All right. So, yeah, so let's go ahead and create our default ship set real quick. I'll mark it as default. We'll save it. And you can see that it's got the application over here.
Mm-hmm.
It's being tracked on the application. So now this default ship set is a part of our app.
Do you have to check the box that says load demo data?
Nope.
No, I know it's not demo data, but like it's cool that you're including the default with it.
And yeah, I mean, I could set it up as demo data and I could have done it that way. But again, I was running into issues when I did it that way with having the images carry over.
Mm-hmm.
This was
Images
the
are
way
finicky.
this was the way that I found that like didn't give me problems, so it's what I went with. All right, ship set name. I need you to be 2-column. We're going to put the name down here.
This
We're going
is
to
so
put the
cool.
application up here. We're going to put the image. Yeah, that feels good. Reload. Yeah, I can live with that. No category. I think you gave me ping files for those, right?
Yep.
Now let's see.
Where'd you put them?
I have no idea.
I want to redo them or find them.
Oh, look, there it is.
It was my first time doing it, any kind of pixel art, and it was fun. But
This kind of slows down the process a little bit. I like the experience of adding the image directly. I'm not as much of a fan of this one, but it'll have to do. I loved it so much more when I could see the image there. But again, for whatever reason, the attachments would not carry in my update sets. This is very annoying.
now, do we want to add the rest of the ships and stuff like that later so you can work on other parts of the data model?
Say again?
Do you want to add all the ships now or wait and add them later offline so you can focus more on
Yeah,
building up more
I'm going to
data
add them
model?
later. I just wanted to make sure that the UI experience here was looking good.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to continue from there. So then the next thing that I need to create is going to be
Another table.
the ship cell.
And that's like the block on the board. Right? Where a part where the ship's assigned to.
Yeah. So this was actually kind of an interesting innovation that came about in this game because originally I just gave a ship like a number of cells that it occupied. And I came up with this model on the fly and it proved to be really fun. Auto number. No. Okay. So basically, mm, 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 mm. Offset X. Hey, it's going to be an integer, and offset Y is going to be an integer. And I need to reference a ship record. So basically what this table is going to do is it basically says, so when you click on a cell in the board game, when you place a ship, you're going to click a particular cell and say, I want to place the ship here. And so the offset X and offset Y basically says from that point that you have clicked,
Go this way.
what cells does this ship occupy? So for each ship cell record, it defines a cell that that ship will occupy. And this actually was kind of a cool innovation because it allowed the creation of ships that were not just in a straight line like the Death Star is a grid of 4. So now that I have created that table, I'm going to open up our Death Star. I'm going to add that related list. And okay, that looks good.
It's one thing I like about the way you set this up is that you don't have to have just linear ships. You can do things like the Death Star.
So the Death Star, from the point that you click to place the ship, is going to occupy cell 00. So that's not the absolute 00 on the game board. That's basically 00 is the coordinates of the cell that you clicked. So whatever cell
Relevant.
you clicked, you're not offsetting X at all, you're not offsetting Y at all. So then we're going to have the cell next to it, the cell to the right. But X is going to be offset 1 to the right. And the Y is not offset at all. So that's the cell next to it is occupied. Then we're going to occupy one below the one that we clicked. So that'll be -1, or no, because the coordinate system, if you think about array indexes, positive is right and positive is down. So we actually want offset Y to be positive. And then we want 1, 1. Offset 1 to the right, offset 1 down. And so now what this has created is this is basically saying that the Death Star will occupy a square that goes one cell to the right, one cell down, one cell back to the left, one cell up. That's the total grid that it's going to occupy. And each of these records are on the application as well. So that entire configuration travels with our application. So at this point, I'm going to do a commit. Created ship set, ship, and ship cell tables. So now if I screw something up, I can tear it out and start at this point. And if I come over here and refresh, you'll see that this branch now is 2 commits ahead of main. So there's now 4 commits here in total.
So you can see your progress.
Yep. All right.
Okay, we've been going about 50 minutes. I don't know how long you wanted to go. Did you want to tackle one more thing or did you want to call it here?
Let's see. That gives me the ship cell. Let me go ahead and create the game table.
This is for like the actual instance of the game that 2 people are playing, right?
Yes. So this one is not going to be extending the metadata table. This one will not be metadata. This is just data. Controls. I do want auto numbering on this one because it's useful. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to need a state field on this, and I could inherit from task. But honestly, task has way too much stuff that I don't need. Like, way too much stuff. So we'll have a state field. The game can have a winner, which is going to be a reference to sys user. There it is. Boop. think that's all I really need right now for this table. Because basically, I'm going to create player. The game will have players, so there will be like a game player table, or maybe just a player. But there will be a player table, and this is a deviation from how I did it in the original app. And we'll address why when we get to the UI side. But basically, the players will be able to choose their own ship sets. Each player will be able to choose their own ship set. Whereas in the previous version, the ship set was decided by the game. Basically, I originally had player 1 and player 2 as references to sysuser on the game table. I'll just go ahead and address it now. That's how I originally had it, was player 1 and player 2. But it introduced a ton of logic that was required to basically check if I'm player 1 and it's player's 1's turn, if I'm player 2 and it's player 2's turn.
It got messy.
It got messy. In fact,
you didn't just use a decision table?
I probably could have, but I wasn't experienced in decision tables at that point, and
well, maybe we can try to work one of those in this time.
I was already trying to learn UI Builder while doing a lab for UI builders.
One thing is enough, and that was a big thing.
That was a big thing.
But anyway, so the way you did it before, there was a lot of really weird, complex conditional logic. So how are you doing it differently now?
Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a current turn for. So whose turn is it? The current turn is for this user. So it's going to get rid of the notion of player 1 and player 2. There's just two players that are going to be on, unnumbered, equal footing. Instead of having a player 1 and player 2 field on the game record, the game record will reference two players that aren't 1 or 2. It's just two players playing the game. And whose turn it is will be marked in this field. So let's update that.
That seems a lot more straightforward.
Yeah, it's going to eliminate a lot of the checking logic that was required in the first one. Reload. And that should give us our Mothership games. See how it automatically pluralizes?
Yep.
Configure list layout. I'm going to move that state up because I like state up near the top. And then new, configure form builder. Winner will be on this side. And that's just because out of convention, ever since the incident table, outcomes were originally put on the side. Now they've moved it to like separate sections, and I may eventually do that if the form gets large enough to need it. But
yeah, it makes sense over there.
Yeah. So then we need, bring that back up. Because Form Builder actually lets us do our choices from right in here. Add a choice. All right, so.
This is slick. Just pop that up to make your choices for your different fields.
Yep. Awaiting join. Planning phase. That's where both players are placing their ships. So basically, they're going to click a button to join the game, and the game will be created in that awaiting join state, essentially. Um, when both players join, it'll move to the planning state. Um, then we're going to move to the playing phase. Canceled. And game over.
Womp womp womp. That's such a negative connotation.
Game completed.
There you go. We're finished.
Very well. We'll change it to completed. Apply. Save. Finish them. Okay, and I do need to add. Actually, no, I don't, because I'll do that on the related list as well. Basically, I need a check mark for when a player is ready. Like after they've placed their ships, they can say, I'm ready. So I do need to track that state, but that's going to be on the players table. So with that, we have our game table set. All right. All right. So basically, I'm going to let's commit and we'll wrap this up for tonight.
We got this
Created
part though.
game table. Yeah, so basically, we have part of the data model done. So up and coming, we'll have to create our players table, which again, this data model is not an accurate representation because we're updating it. But we'll have to create our players table, which will be different from this version of it. The players table will have a reference. It'll still have the reference to sysuser, but it will have the ship set that the player wants to use, and it will have a ready check mark for them stating that they're ready to play the game. And it'll have a reference to the game. Then instead of ship location, I'm probably going to do game cell or something like that. And that's basically going to track whether or not a ship occupies a particular cell, whether or not there's a hit or a miss token in that cell. And of course, which player's board we're talking about. Because each player has their own respective board. And then we'll create that game command, game event. And once we have that set up, I'll have to do a little bit more work on the access controls because we need a player role here. So we'll have to do that. Then we can build the flows, which will process the game commands into game state and game events. Then we'll be able to actually start on UI. So like this is a whole process, and like it took me months of development the first time around to kind of figure things out and get it right. in part because I originally started building this as in scripts rather than Flow Designer, and I kept making mistakes. And finally, I was just like, I don't have time for this. So I scrapped the scripts. I re-implemented everything in Flow Designer, and I actually redid everything in Flow Designer in about a night.
Mm-hmm.
Like I went I went from stressed and frustrated for the better part of a week to just knocking the entire thing out in flows in a night. So I'm kind of hoping I can repeat that
Yeah.
and get most of the flows done pretty quickly once we have the data model
Mm-hmm.
squared away. And of course, we did a lot of talking tonight in setting up the scoped application and talking about scoped applications and setting up the GitHub, setting up the GitHub credentials. So there was a lot of pre-work we had to do to get started. But hopefully next time we'll be able to finish the data model and maybe set ourselves up for flows on the third session.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll get to the first flow on the second session.
That sounds good.
Um, but yeah, this was, as you can see, there's a lot of thought that went into how
Yeah.
these different tables were going to interact, how the model would actually function, how the flows would process the data. And I really went outside of the normal method of
Mm-hmm.
that I normally build an application, particularly because you have two different players that are communicating simultaneously. So like if player one takes their turn and then tries to take a second turn, the game engine has to prevent that. And that's harder to do. That's harder to accomplish when uh that's harder to accomplish when you don't record a stream of the commands that
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to do. It's just it's harder to process that. But
Yeah,
with
but all
this
that
setup, it's a little
pre-work,
easier, huh?
yeah, all that pre-work you did before being able to coming in and setting up the scope data, setting up the data model, all that planning is essential to making sure that you get it right, and it ends up saving hours of time when you're properly planning out the data model instead of just going in there and throwing tables together and seeing what sticks and all that kind of stuff, you know?
I just saw that we had John Alexander join us.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, John.
Yay!
um,
And all this leads up to proper foundation for the UI, whether you're using UI
yeah,
Builder or Portal.
yeah, and I mean the one of the big keys that you'll see as we move into the UI side of things is that game event table. So that game event table is and of course I can't like laser pointer or anything on this. Um, I'll have to rethink that for future sessions. But basically that game event table is really important in the overall architecture because we're going to use record watchers to listen to changes on that table. And that's how we're going to push changes to the front end. So basically, when player one takes a shot, player two needs to find out about that pretty quickly. And record watchers are the perfect solution for handling that. And for that to work, you have to watch a particular table. And that game event table really uh, creates a great tool for creating that
Yep.
interaction. Um,
Gives you that consolidated place to look.
yeah. It basically ends up acting as a message bus for the front end. So you put commands into that command table, and it spits out in the event table. And so basically, player one puts a command on the command table. It gets processed into game state. That gets pushed into the event table. And then that through record watchers gets pushed back to player two. And so that's how you get that seamless communication in between the two players going back and forth. and of course, we have record watchers in both UI Builder and Service Portal, so we'll be able to see how both of those operate there. It's a really cool feature, and I wish more people used it in both interfaces, because we used it in our hackathon entry, and
Mhm.
it's so satisfying to get that live update.
Watch that
When
bar move back
yes,
and forth.
yeah, Jesselyn set that one up via Record Watchers, and it was so, like, I didn't even know that she had set it up, and it was just so satisfying when she turned around and scanned it, and it like popped up, and I realized, oh my gosh, like, because I had set up the scanning part of it. Well, she set up the QR scanning itself. I just hooked it up to the back end, because the Hackathon app used the same command type structure. It kind of borrowed a bit of that command event model. But it was so satisfying to watch the scoreboard update right before your eyes as people were scanning the QR codes. It was really cool. It's a little less satisfying in Battleship, because a lot of the updates, you're initiating them as the player, so it's not quite as satisfying. But it is satisfying when the other player shoots at you and you see the miss token pop
Oh
up.
yeah, like especially if I can get around to animating those effects or what have you. Like it's those micro interactions that we talk about in UI and UX design that reward the user for taking the actions they're taking.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to getting to that part of it, but we have to get through the data model and the game engine and all of those parts, because there's so much that went into the building of this app. And like, one of the most common criticisms of my lab was that A, it was hard to follow, and B, that they wish that it had covered more. And part of what made it hard to follow was that, one, you had to come in with some knowledge of UI Builder for some of the parts to make sense. And two, I had a very short amount of time to cover
A lot.
the data model, the flow designer, the game engine that was built in Flow Designer, the pre-built stuff in UI Builder. Like, there was so much that came stock, and when I crafted the idea for, and I think it may have been Gabby that actually may have come up with the idea, or maybe it was you, or maybe it was a hybrid. I don't remember who initiated the idea, but there was a lot of back and forth that created this overall idea. But when I sat down and wrote out the abstract, there was this vision of being able to have people walk through from end to end building it.
And then you realize how long all of that takes, and you were like, okay, we
Yeah.
gotta
Then I
keep going.
realized it takes forever to do all this stuff. And it was like, yeah, that's not going to happen in the 40 minutes, because like,
Yeah.
there's talking pieces of the lab, and then there's the doing pieces of the lab, and so you end up with like 40 minutes of actual doing, plus like challenges at the end for the folks that are able to like
Oh yeah, and
speed run.
you
But
don't want,
still,
like, we all know how to make tables and stuff like that. Like, we don't want to sit in training and do something that we obviously know how to do before.
but that
We want
and
to focus
that's
on the
why
new
I'm
stuff.
glad that, like, post knowledge, I mean, knowledge was so
I am still recovering
inspiring.
knowledge.
Like, especially with everything that like the community folks put together, the MVP banquet and stuff like that. Yeah, our little custom guys.
Your
That's
camera
right.
doesn't like your minifig.
It doesn't. It's so far away, but it has a ponytail.
The card
but,
they made, like,
but like,
it was insane.
yeah, like, it was Paige.
We have to show that because she is so right. Making labs is
We
just watching
we
you.
we both keep clicking it at the same time. We both keep trying to put it
What?
up there.
No,
Making
just
labs is
watching
hard.
you having to not only put together the application, but then put together the instruction books and figure out the timing and all that. And, I put a lot of detail into when I do my session talks. Like I have to write a script and I memorize the script and I act the script because I can't do the public talking at all. But like the lab adds levels of complexity.
Yeah.
So I want to see more people putting labs out there, but it is not for the faint of heart and it is not for the procrastinator.
And
So you'll probably never see me do that.
I've done on-demand lab type
Yeah.
content before. Night and day.
Yeah.
Night and day. The on-demand stuff is so much easier. You don't have to concern yourself near as much about time. You break it up into digestible pieces and you're good. Some people will do part of it. Some people will do the whole thing. Some people will skip around. Like
Mhm.
on demand, so much easier. Live labs, super time constrained, and
And
you
you didn't
have
have
to give.
gurus.
I
You
had no
were like the
gurus.
only
Yeah.
person in that room of how many people?
That was the other most common criticism was why did Travis not have help?
'Cause he
I thought I messed that one up. um,
lessons learned.
it was a fun experience, it being my first lab. I will go into my next lab because I think I plan on doing it again. I learned a lot from the first time around, and I got a lot of really good feedback, both positive and negative. You
Mhm.
know, criticism and support that has been really helpful in helping me refine and figure out how I can do it better next time. So I'm hoping to do it better next time, but I also love this environment of being able to do the Code Creative Lives where like we can pace ourselves and we can show the whole thing end to end. Um,
We should do Code Creative Live at Knowledge next year.
Paige quoting me, I think. Yes, labs, making labs are hard.
So he thinks he will do another lab next year, and I will watch you make the lab and probably not do one myself.
I'm I hope that I will go in with a better sense of one, how to pitch a lab that won't sink my battleship. Um and and I hope that I will go in with a better sense of how to craft something that's a little more digestible so
Mhm.
it's not as hard to follow for people that are coming in, you know,
Terrified
without
of
the
UI
full
Builder and
knowledge
looking for
of what
Travis
the back
Colton.
end game engine looks like.
Oh, I was
And
gonna say terrified of UI Builder and looking for Travis Tolson to hold their hand through it.
yeah, yeah.
That was less Travis Tolson holding your hand and more, come on, kid, let's
Some of the
go.
folks that came in, like I did have good ratings overall, and some of the people who came in really loved the lab, and most of them had some experience with UI Builder previously. And like what I was explaining made a lot more sense to them, and these were the folks that like went through and were trying to do all of the challenges in speed run fashion, and for them it seemed like the process was a lot more fun. um Other folks who were trying to wrap their minds around what a record watcher was in the first place had a much steeper learning curve. And I feel like there are better ways that I can maybe accommodate them in future labs. But it was a great learning experience, and walking away from knowledge, both the or the lab experience, the creator con hackathon experience,
I'm so glad we
everything that
finally
the
got to do
community
hackathon together.
folks. Huh?
I said, I'm so glad we finally got to do a hackathon together. That's something I've
That
been
was so
wanting to
much
do.
fun.
We've been wanting to do
um
that since I started on the platform.
yeah. That it was so much fun. It was so
Uh-huh.
much fun. I was so glad we got a chance to do it. And like joining your OP hackathon team from last year was a little unfair, but
And we didn't set out to be all OP or whatever. I wanted to support a women majority, women led team last year. And I pulled in people that I knew, some of whom I had worked with before and enjoyed working with. And so it was 4 women and 1 non-binary individual. And I had an idea that I'd wanted to see come to life since my days in City Hall, and we built it and we did the thing. And so now you are our token man this year, but yeah, here you go, right here.
Amateur. I did my part.
Can't help it, the ladies are OP. But we had so much fun.
So, but
Lots
yeah,
of learning
that was a lot of
experiences.
fun. And then, like I said, everything like the MVP banquet was so much fun. Like getting to see all of the names and faces of all of these great people that you see building content. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've seen you, I know your stuff. I've seen you, I know your stuff. And you know, just getting to sit down and meet those folks, you know, it was so much fun. And
the community, and I love the way that community like supports each other and everything. But
oh
like,
yeah,
did you get soap? I got soap.
I did not. Well, I mean, I got soap through you, I guess.
No, you're not getting my soap. That's my soap. For those of you that missed it, Robert Federick makes soap by hand, and it's really cool soap. So I
No,
comment.
Gabby got soap
Yeah.
and she took my seat and I did not get soap. So
Well, that's okay.
you
You can
got
look
soap then.
longingly at my soap.
But yeah, like I walked away
Cool.
from that ready to like jump back into content
Mhm.
and everything else. So
It was
like,
really invigorating.
yeah. So I'm glad to be getting back to this. It's exciting. I'm looking forward to continuing this project and building this out and, you know, showing folks what went into setting up the lab in the first place. um And that's not the lab's fault. That's my fault for biting off way more than I could chew. Building a custom application, learning UI Builder, and doing my first lab ever all in the same year was a terrible idea.
That's
Um,
par for the course. You're
but
not
getting to
happy
show
unless you're
people
going
kind of
Mach 3.
yes, yes, yeah. It's not me if I'm not making bad decisions about how much work I'm capable of handling. Um, I'm not happy unless I'm going Mach 2 with my hair on fire.
Yep.
Uh, so
But it was a good learning experience. And I look forward
it
to
was.
seeing you do a lab next year and being amused while you cuss in the other room over whatever it is you're putting together.
But at least now we get to like I love the fact that I get to revisit kind of the data model,
Mhm.
the game engine, and kind of
Walk
show
through the
people
whole
what
thing.
went into it because there was like I almost walked away from the lab disappointed because I was like, there's so much more here.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much that people who like people came up and they're like, are you going to publish the lab after the fact? Like, is this content going to be available? And I was like, but there's so much more that you didn't get to see. But
Well, now they will.
now we get to show.
Mm-hmm.
Now we get to show, and I get to kick and scream over UI Builder all over again. Hopefully, I'm a little more experienced this time, and I won't kick and scream as much. Um, it has such a steep learning curve. It's really cool, but
Mm-hmm.
it has a steep learning curve. Um, so we'll get to do that, and then I'll get to compare it to Service Portal and see if my far more extensive experience with Service Portal leads to a different outcome. Like, will I
Mm-hmm.
be able to do it faster in Service Portal the way that I swore I could do all along?
Yes, you will do the
Which
fashion service.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm calling it into question at this point because now I actually have to like live up to those words, and I don't know if I can actually do it now. Now,
I'm biased and egotistical. I'll go ahead and tell you, yes, it will be faster in Service Portal.
it was easy when I was angry at trying to learn UI Builder in record time. It was easy to say at the time, I could do this so much faster in Service Portal, but now I might actually have to eat those words.
A little bit of clarity now that you're going to have to actually do it.
Now that I'm actually going to have to do it, I might want to walk those words back.
Well, we'll see.
We will. We'll see if it's faster or easier for me, or if my experience with UI Builder has made my skills a little better in that area. But we'll see. I will say that I do like creating components for UI Builder. That's a fun process. I snapped that thing together so fast. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Okay. Well, next time we'll finish up the game model and then hopefully get into or set up for some work in Flow Designer. I don't get to touch Flow Designer much, so I'm excited to see that.
I love it. It's so much fun. I don't get to use it nearly enough, but that'll be upcoming next time on Code Creative Live.
We need like an exit screen. Less time on Code Creative Live, kind of like Dragon Ball Z or something like that.
All right. Well, I think that wraps us up for tonight. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Always glad to have you. And hopefully we'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye.